The following presentation is brought to you by the Prevail organization. Every one of us has the right to pursue the life we choose to live. All About Assistive Technology, Part 2, presented by Gabriel Ligo. In this presentation, we will be discussing augmentative and alternative communication, accessible mainstream programs, basic accessibility options in iPads, adapted access for computers through keyboards, mice, and other means, switches for access, and adapted toys. AAC. What is AAC? This stands for augmentative, adding to speech, alternative, replacing speech, and communication, the ability to connect with and transmit information between people. The 5 steps of AT and AAC evaluations in schools. Step 1. Initiate the process, often through the student's IEP or Individualized Education Plan. Step 2. Consideration of AT and AAC needs. Step 3. An assessment of the student. Step 4. Discussion of the AT and AAC recommendations. Step 5. Acquisition and implementation of the AT and AAC. Different types of AAC include no-tech, which is gestures, sign language, facial expression, and body language, as well as vocalizations. Then there's low-tech, that would include printed and laminated communication books and symbols. Mid-tech includes simpler electronic devices that typically record one or a few human voices that can then be activated to convey a simple message. And high-tech options involve some type of a computer system, iPad, tablet, or full computer with dynamic displays and multiple linked pages, capable of a wide range of communication options. A core board is a single-page communication tool. It has words and symbols that are commonly used and can be used to support communication by pointing to the word on the page. Communication books use multiple pages with words and symbols. Similar to a core board, the person can use a communication book as a tool by pointing to words on the page. Communication books can be used as an alternative to high-tech communication programs. iPads and other tablets are often used as a platform for communication devices, with a wide variety of apps that are available at different levels of complexity for communication. How to know which app to use for communication? Ideally, the best option is to refer clients to a speech-language pathologist for an evaluation. Alternatively, contacting the app developers that make the communication app you might be considering can provide you with additional information to make your choice. Who can use AAC? Anyone and everyone. There are no restrictions due to age, sensory challenges, motor challenges, behavioral challenges, cognitive skills, language skills, social skills, or previous experience. There's no hierarchy of AAC use, meaning you do not have to start with low-tech and graduate up to high-tech. You can go directly to using high-tech devices if that's what appears to meet your personal needs. And, contrary to common belief, using an AAC device will not prevent the development of speech. In fact, it supports it. Language underlies everything from academics to social skills to adaptive functions to independence and autonomy. If you can't understand language, you can't learn. If you can't speak a language, you can't influence your learning. We know that kids we work with struggle to understand and process spoken language. They may have attention or processing difficulties for both input and output, resulting in slower comprehension and struggles to communicate. Why use AAC? If you speak to a person who is able to verbally speak functionally, you are modeling for them and teaching them how to use language verbally. If you speak to a person who does not speak functionally with lots of people and is learning language through AAC, that person may become confused and not learn how to use language functionally. If you speak to a person using AAC, you are teaching that person how to communicate functionally using AAC. The case for using AAC early and often. Think about this. Typical children hear around 4,380 hours of verbal language before speaking around 12 to 18 months. If only using AAC 2 times a week for 20 to 30 minutes, it would take 84 years for it to be equal. It takes 100 to 150 exposures to a word before learners start using it. 9 reasons to use visuals or symbols and pictures in communication. Visuals are permanent, whereas spoken words will disappear. Visuals also allow time for language processing. Visuals prepare students for transitions from one environment to another. Visuals help kids to see what you mean. Visuals help all students. And visuals help build independence. Visuals are transferable between environments and people. Visuals have no attitude, no tone, no frustration, no disapproval. And visuals help reduce anxiety. Accessible apps and iPads. Here is a list of some useful mainstream programs that improve accessibility just by their nature. They are available for free on both tablet platforms like the iPad, as well as full computer systems. Skype allows the user to connect with others through video calls, as well as texting. Facebook provides a safe environment for connecting with people that the user defines. Web browsers allow for setup of bookmarks that go directly to the content that the user wishes to access on the Internet. The Kindle ebook platform allows for easy access to a wide variety of books. Audible audiobooks again allows access to books, and the user does not have to be able to read them. Pandora allows for preset custom radio stations. And reminder and scheduler programs help to improve issues related to organization. The iPad has a wide variety of accessibility features, far too extensive to go into in detail here. To summarize, it offers assistance with vision and hearing deficits, such as screen magnification and accommodation for hearing aids. It offers assistance for people with physical and motor skills challenges through options like voice control, touch access accommodation, or access through switches. It also assists with issues like attention, cognitive, and learning disabilities through its features that include guided access and content restrictions. Alternative keyboards and styluses are also available. Though they cannot be checked out, a few iPads are available with communication apps for trial with staff at the ODMF Assistive Technology Library. Adapted computer input. There are a variety of alternate keyboards for improved access to a computer. The models on the top are large keyboards with big keys, making it easier to physically access individual keys. Those models are also showing high contrast and alternate color combinations for easier visual access of the desired keys. The model on the upper right is a wireless Bluetooth keyboard, which makes it easier for positioning it exactly where the user needs it. The keyboard on the bottom has a plastic guard over the keys, called a Keyguard. The Keyguard isolates the keys, which helps to stabilize and position fingers or pointers. This system is very helpful for people with reduced control of their hands. The Keyguard allows the person to slide their hand or pointer across the surface to the selection they desire. This system works well in combination with all physical pointer aids and enlarged label key stickers on the keys. A few other adapted keyboard options are small footprint or mini keyboards. Their size makes it easier to position them, which is particularly useful for one-handed typists. There are also keyboards with alternate key layouts, specifically designed to maximize typing by one-handed typists on both right and left-handed layouts. And there are on-screen keyboards as well, which is a software-type keyboard that can be accessed alternatively by a mouse, some other pointing device, or even just a switch. These are sticker labels to place on the keys of your keyboard to provide an enlarged visual as well as a high contrast color scheme to make it easier to see them. These sets are also available with Braille bumps for improved access by users who are familiar with that system. This is an adaptation that is easy to employ and very affordable. Here is a sample of a wide selection of trackball styles that are on the market. Some stores have them available on display to try out. Some come with software that adjusts the behavior of the mouse and the mouse buttons. Many of the trackballs have a larger sized roller ball and buttons positioned in a variety of ways to best meet different people's needs. The larger ball makes it easier to use than a standard mouse for many users with less than perfect hand function. The additional buttons allow for more features to be accessed easily. The model on the bottom left has also been switch adapted by an AT company so that switches of any type that the user might need can be added and utilized in place of the standard buttons that come with that trackball. The model on the bottom right is a miniature trackball that is actually held in the hand, which is much easier for some people to access with their thumb while holding it, solving the mounting issue at the same time. This item is known as a vertical mouse. It is much more ergonomically correct in the way that it positions the hand, which makes it ideal for people who are suffering from carpal tunnel syndrome. This one is also a wireless mouse, which has its own benefits for ease of positioning. This is a standard switch-adapted mouse, which means it has been adapted so that the ability switches, like the two shown in the picture, can be plugged in for easier access of the left and right mouse click features. There are wireless versions of this mouse in the Assistive Technology Lending Library. These are two examples of an older style of assistive technology known as a head wand. As you can see here, they are used for typing on a keyboard. Items like paintbrushes or styluses can also be attached to the ends. They offer a tactile or physical sensation when using them, which some people prefer to some of the more non-physical electronic systems common today. The mouth sticks seen here are similar in function to the head wand, only they are grasped in the mouth and used to make selections. You can also attach different ends onto these, such as a stylus, to interact with a touchscreen. This is a solution that is often seen being used by people with quadriplegia. Switches and what you might use them for. Modified physical access through switches. What can a switch do to improve access? It allows for different physical access methods, such as using your head, elbow, foot, or some other body part. There are variable pressure or strength requirements. It can provide tactile and auditory feedback. Who would benefit? Those with mobility and cognitive impairments are the most common user groups. and sometimes those with visual impairments. Prices can range from $20 up to $800, with the average switch on the market costing about $65. Now let's look at some examples. There is a wide variety of switch types to meet the abilities of many different people. The standard button type switches, seen here in the top left corner, are the most common. It is a basic, rugged, plastic button switch. They come in a variety of different sizes. The top one is most commonly referred to as the big red switch. Then you have the medium button switch, and the small ones are often referred to as a spec switch. The ultralight HD switch in the upper right corner is a nice one. It is much cheaper than most switches at about $20 each. It needs only a very light touch to activate it, and they are small, so you can mount several of them right next to each other easily. The pillow switch in the bottom left is a soft cushion switch encased in cloth and can be pinned to a sheet, so it can be used by an individual in bed by simply rolling over onto it. The wobble switch at the bottom right corner is a great option because the arm lever can be hit from any angle to activate the switch. This means that someone who has a less controlled, larger movement, in an arm or a leg for example, can move the body part however they are able and still have a good chance of activating the switch when it has been positioned correctly. Here are some examples of custom fabricated 3D printed button switches that we have made. These two at the top are standard, medium, and slightly larger button switches. The one in the bottom left has a built-up lip, which would allow the user to rest their fingers on the edge and then dip down to activate the switch. And then the small one on the bottom right is like the mini spec switch we saw on the previous slide. The cost to produce these, if you have the know-how and a 3D printer, is maybe $5 plus labor. Here are a few more custom 3D printed switches. These are a different model with a more consistent and springier feel to the button action, though they are taller than the previous models seen on the last slide. The two on the top have the activation surface, seen in red and purple, raised up above the base by about a 1/4 inch. The model on the bottom has the orange activation surface slightly sunken in. Again, these variations are to accommodate a wide variety of needs by individuals whose disabilities affect them all in unique ways. Now we are looking at some smaller, custom 3D printed switch types. These top two are examples of a mini lever switch. The one on the right is a double switch configuration. They are a slightly lighter touch option, though not on the level of the previously seen ultralight switch. The one on the bottom is called a raindrop switch and is even smaller than the spec switch. Again, smaller switches can be easier to mount in tight spaces and allows for mounting multiple switches next to each other. Here on the upper left is what is called a sip and puff switch. A straw is at the user's mouth and leads down to a switch box. If you sip or puff on the straw, you can get two distinct and different switch activations. Some of these systems can offer 4 or more switch inputs through additional actions like a longer sip or puff and harder sips and puffs. Here on the top right is a tread or foot switch. You might have seen one of these attached to a sewing machine, often used with a foot. They are very rugged, so if you have an individual with strong, big movements, this might be a good option for them. You just hit anywhere on the top surface to activate it. In the bottom left, you have a string switch. This is similar to what you have on many lamps. You pull on the string to activate the switch. A great way this can be employed is by lengthening the string and tying it around a wrist or an ankle. Then you can, again, get an activation with larger, less controlled movements. The grasp switch in the bottom right corner is held in the hand. It is squeezed to get the switch activation. The key with this one is that you must also be capable of relaxing your hand after activating it in order to use it again. A key bonus for this switch type is that not having to go seek out the switch location is very helpful for some people and can greatly increase their activation reaction time. The chin switch, seen in the top left corner, is used by dropping the chin, but, like with the grasp switch, the user must be able to keep their head up away from the switch between intended activations. In the top right, the mini Beamer wireless switch is one example of an electronics wireless switch system. It consists of 2 parts, a receiver unit that is plugged into the device you wish to control, which will receive the signal that is sent to it by the second half of the system, called a transmitter, which is positioned where the client can reach it. The transmitter is a switch unto itself, but any of the other switches we've seen so far could be plugged into it if that style of switch, whether it be grasp, lever, or whatever, works better for the client. The Taction Pad at the bottom left is a unique kind of switch system. They have a sticky-backed sticker type configuration that you would attach to or wrap around an object like a ball or favorite toy. Then that item becomes the switch and is activated whenever it is grasped. In the bottom right corner is another type of wireless switch system and environmental control unit. The 2 units with the blue and yellow buttons attached to the top are radio frequency transmitter units that send a radio signal to the receiver unit. In this case, the environmental control unit seen in the picture with them. As with the mini Beamer above, any other style of switch can be plugged into the transmitter units and used for activation. You can have as many as 2 items that would be plugged into a standard outlet and are normally always on or off, like a fan or a light, plugged into the environmental control unit. Then, when the transmitter units are activated, the appliances plugged into the environmental control unit will respond. These top 2 switches are called proximity switches. They are also electronic switches. You do not have to actually touch the surface to activate them, just getting close to them. The honeybee on the right We'll even let you adjust how far away you have to be before it activates. They also offer auditory feedback with a beep and visual feedback with sensor lights. The Pad plate switches in the bottom right corner are a different type of switch. There is no mechanical movement. There are electronic traces under the surface so that when you brush the surface with a body part, it will activate the switch. The sensor's switch interface in the bottom left corner provides a very sensitive switch activation system for up to 2 switches. The sensor pad is taped to a part of the person's body where there is a reliable movement of a small muscle group. Think of muscles on your face when you twitch your cheek as an example. Then, when you perform that movement, it activates the switch. The sensitivity can be dialed in very finely, making this a good option for people with very little physical movement options left to them. Now we are looking at some items that would be used with switches. The battery interrupters, seen in the top left corner, are to make a piece of equipment adapted for use with switches. You need an item that is run off of batteries and is in either the always on or off state, such as a fan or light. The copper plate at one end of the cable is slid in between the flat end of the battery and the spring inside the battery housing of your device, interrupting the flow of electricity. And then the user's switch is plugged into the jack at the other end of the cable. So, when they activate their switch, they complete the circuit and the batteries do their job activating the item. The Hitch 2 switch interface in the upper right corner is a switch interface system that can be used with a computer or a smartphone. Up to 5 switches can be plugged into it. It can be set to provide activations like mouse movements or common keyboard commands like enter, spacebar, arrow keys, and other inputs as well. We talked earlier about the PowerLink environmental control unit seen here in the bottom left corner. You can plug a switch directly into it or use wireless switches. Then items that would be plugged into a standard outlet and are normally always on or off, like a fan, light, or maybe a blender, are plugged into the PowerLink. Then, when the connected switches are activated, the appliances plugged into the environmental control unit will respond. The other feature available with this unit is that you can alter how the PowerLink responds to switch activations. The activation can be the typical momentary type, which means the item is activated only for as long as the switch is being actively engaged by the user. The unit could also be set to latched mode, like a wall light switch, where the item is turned on with one switch activation and it stays on until the switch is activated a second time. You can also set it with a timer to only stay on for a certain number of seconds or minutes. The Relax scanning remote in the bottom right corner is a basic universal remote control that you can set up to use with your television. An LED light will move through the control choices at a set time interval, like every 3 seconds or so. And then, when the feature you want to use lights up, you activate your switch to send that control signal to the television. Here we have a few more items. You've seen the Big Track trackball at the top left earlier. It and the switch-adapted mouse at the top right corner are both set to have the user's switches plugged into them for control of the left and right mouse buttons. The two bottom items are switch interfaces that can be used with an iPad. The Bluetooth switch interface on the bottom left corner is a Bluetooth wireless interface device. It has two switches built into the top surface, seen here as the white and yellow squares, but you can plug in any other switches you might like to use instead. Then you can use those two switches to control your iPad. The Hook Plus switch interface is a similar unit, only it plugs directly into the iPad, and it does not have any switches built into it. You can plug in as many as 4 switches into the Hook Plus. This is a simple switch-adapted Bluetooth phone earpiece here in the top left corner, so you can answer or hang up your phone with the connected switch. In the top right corner is a switch-adapted dice roller that allows you to connect a switch to it and get a dice roll result for use in playing a game. This is a custom infrared switch system at the bottom for making any switch-adapted item, like the fan in the picture, wirelessly controlled through infrared signals sent from the accompanying remote or some of the more sophisticated speech-generating devices that are capable of working as a programmable universal remote control. Here we have some examples of switch-adapted toys that are available in the ODMF Assistive Technology Lending Library. In the top left is the Nerf Blaster that has a barrel full of many foam darts that can be shot out of it at targets. In the picture, you can see the switch is plugged into the jack at the bottom of the handle grip. And it's a similar setup for all of these toys to plug switches in. We have a bubble machine in the top middle. The user makes bubbles on activation. The RC stunt car on the top right can have as many as 4 switches plugged into the adapted remote controller, though only 2 switches are strictly necessary, one to go forward and one to turn one direction. In the bottom left is the Discovery T-Rex. This is a simple toy that uses 2 switches, one to move forward and the other to make it roar. In the bottom middle is the Jolly Penguin Race, a single switch toy to make the penguins march around the track. And finally, the dice roller at the bottom right corner is used by one switch to roll the dice, and the clear plastic dome is removable, so you can change out the type and number of dice to suit the needs of the game being played. The Xbox Adaptive Controller, seen here on the right, is an amazing piece of assistive technology made by the Microsoft Corporation that allows you to plug in as many as 19 switches to have full access of the controller to play video games or use it with a regular Windows computer for control of that environment as well. It is highly customizable. The Logitech Adaptive Gaming Kit on the left offers a variety of 12 switches and mounting boards. This is a good starting point for trying out different types of basic switches to see what might work best for you. Here is a custom switch-adapted stereo. All of the main functions of the stereo have been adapted for use with switches, including power, volume control, moving between preset radio stations, and controlling the CD player. The following are a starting list of AT-related Internet resources that are useful for identifying assistive technology items that can be purchased or created. This concludes All About Assistive Technology, Part 2. If you've got any questions or would like to contact Open Doors for Multicultural Families to access the Assistive Technology Lending Library, please use the contact information here.